We believe that we have officially solved the true origins of Darth Nihilus. Greetings, and welcome to the archives. Darth Nihilus has gone down in history as one of the strongest and most terrifying Sith Lords to have ever lived. When the superweapon known as the Mass Shadow Generator went off on Malachor V, it killed so many people that it tore a hole in the Force itself. That hole, or wound, was filled with the screams, death, and anguish of all those who had suffered there. But one man had suffered so greatly from the Mass Shadow Generator that the wound focused itself into his very being. And that being became Darth Nihilus, the Lord of Hunger, forever enslaved to the siphoning of energy from other living beings. Who he was before was never explored nor explained in the lore. Theories abounded whether he was a Jedi, a soldier, or just a regular civilian. But after looking into an unlikely source and putting some pieces together, we think we found exactly who Darth Nihilus was before. So let's begin. In order to explain how we know Nihilus's origins, we have to explain our source. Our source is the Knights of the Old Republic campaign guide. This was an Old Republic expansion to the Saga edition of Star Wars and the tabletop RPG. Within this guide is information on crafting characters and adventures for your own game, but it also gives details on existing characters within the Star Wars galaxy. Each character has a stat block which covers their classes, talents, and their abilities. Right beneath the name of the character, it shows what race and class they are. For example, Darth Revan's sheet shows that he has 7 levels as a Jedi, 5 levels in Jedi Knight, 3 in Sith Apprentice, and 5 in Sith Lord, all culminating in a total character level of 20, which is the highest level possible in the game. Through that, we can actually see the progression of his own story from a Jedi Knight to Sith Apprentice and eventually Sith Lord. But what is it if we find when we look over the stat block of Darth Nihilus? Below his name and his character classes, we find that he has 7 levels as a soldier. Then of course, 7 levels in Sith Apprentice, and 5 as a Sith Lord to make his character a level 19. As an aside, it's fascinating that they decide to put Nihilus just a single level below Revan, showing that Revan indeed may have had more skill and experience, but Nihilus's raw power almost closes that gap. But Revan versus Nihilus could be an analysis for another time. Let's get back on topic. It is worth noting that anything found in the Star Wars RPG sourcebooks are considered a part of Legends continuity, since they are officially licensed by Lucasfilm. Many important Sith artifacts, backstories, and even Force abilities have originally come from these sourcebooks, so we believe we can take them as solid foundation at least. Even if the lead is as minuscule as a character class, they could have made him exclusively Sith levels just like they had done for several other characters, but they deliberately decided not to. This may solve one of the greatest mysteries in Star Wars Legends. It was always speculated exactly who Nihilus may have been. Many, such as ourselves, chose to believe that Nihilus was just a regular guy with no stake in the Mandalorian Wars at all, but that he was a part of it, and that it changed him so dramatically and so completely that he decided that life was meaningless. He watched war bring suffering to the galaxy, so he could relive its pain by giving the galaxy the gift of death. But we want to go even deeper than this, so he is confirmed to have been a soldier during the Battle of Malachor V, but the question is now, which side did he fight for? The Republic and the Mandalorian fleets were both caught in the gravity vortex created by the MSG, and unfortunately the campaign guide does not shed light on this. There is no Mandalorian class in the game, so the Mando stat blocks just use a mix of soldier and other classes. This leaves us without a concrete confirmation for which side Nihilus originally fought for. Or does it? We believe that we have found a great clue. If you look at what Nihilus does immediately after being reborn as a dark side aberration, he uses his titanic power in the Force to resurrect a ship from the graveyard of Malachor. The ship he chose? The Ravager. This was a Republic Centurion class battlecruiser. It only makes sense for him to use the ship that he would have been the most familiar with. As a Republic soldier, he would have served above these ships in his final moments, or perhaps even prior during the war. So in a cruel twist of fate, the Lord of Hunger was one of the men under Revan and Mitra Surek's command, a casualty of a super weapon that never should have been used, and was ordered to be used by the men that he was serving. And now, his anger mounts specifically against the Jedi. Kreia, when speaking of Nihilus, said that he did not care for the Sith at all. All he cared about was feeding his hunger. He was a being of pure willpower, driven by the basic need to feed constantly on the Force. But of course, he never aimed to feed on the Sith. Even though he could have, Nihilus used them to gain the training that he needed, but turned his hatred on the Jedi, the beings that had betrayed and failed him as a human. Out of pure curiosity, we decided to look into what it was like for a Republic soldier during this era, since we'll likely never get a fully written out backstory for Nihilus. Maybe we can visualize our own by seeing what the average soldier's life was like. The Republic military is something that isn't often talked about because it was so outshined by the more elite iterations. In the Great Galactic War, we had the Republic troopers that donned the armor reminiscent of the clone troopers, and threw hands with Sith warriors. Then later, there are the iconic clones themselves during the Republic's Twilight era. But for 25,000 years, the Republic had a standard military, one that was dissolved in 1000 BBY. These guys were largely made up of local militias and sector forces that answered to a single general. These generals then answered to a central command authority known as the Ministry of Defense. Many of the average rank and file soldiers were conscripts from various planets across the galaxy, who then went through 18 weeks of basic training before being given their station. If they showed promise, they would be given an additional 12 months of specialist training. Their uniforms were light suits of red and yellow armor with black body gloves underneath. Some wore helmets with black and yellow markings in a similar fashion to the helmets worn by the rebellion of Luke's day. In terms of their armament, they were loaded out with basic blaster rifles, carbines, and heavy repeating blasters. But this era in the galaxy saw a unique transitional period where vibro swords were still standard equipment. Only 50 years earlier, the galaxy was plunged into the Great Sith Wars by Exar Kun, which saw the return of the Sith, and with them, the Mandalorian Crusaders. This posed a unique problem. The Republic found themselves fighting more melee-focused enemies such as Sith, Dark Jedi, and Mandalorian warriors. Blasters typically didn't cut it in this close combat, so the Republic military readopted the use of vibro weapons in order to give their soldiers a fighting chance in close quarters. But fascinatingly enough, due to the nature of the Mandalorian Wars, the Republic soldiers didn't actually see a lot of fighting on the ground. For the first about 10 years of the war, the Republic was very non-committal to the Mandalorian invaders. They turned a blind eye for a while, hoping to avoid another large-scale conflict. They only got serious towards the end of the Neo-Crusaders, when they began making bold attacks on the Inner Rim worlds. Because of this, the Republic had to quickly mobilize fleets in order to defend these planets, and to block off hyperlanes. Because of this, most of the Mandalorian War saw battle in orbit and in space. So military personnel of this era were not often foot soldiers, but guards that defended the ship in case they were boarded by Mandalorian shock troopers. If we had to guess, this is the role that we believe the man that would become Nihilus was playing during the war. It would explain why Nihilus was familiar with operating a Republic battlecruiser, why he knew how to effectively command assaults, and how he learned the lightsaber so efficiently. He was technically only given about 10 years of training under Kreia. His partner in crime, Darth Sion, had once been a Sith marauder, so he already was familiar with the blade. But Nihilus had been a soldier, so he had basic sword training, which was now augmented by his Sith teachings. A revelation like this adds a lot of depth to the character of Nihilus, we believe. But of course, as he continued, the hole within him consumed the last vestiges of mortality. Soon enough, whatever rage, hatred, and lust for revenge that had once existed was no longer there. By the time Mitra Surik returns to face the Sith Triumvirate, there was no one within Nihilus at all. No home, no prior existence. He was a cloak and a mask. A walking wound in the Force with no plan for the future and no humanity whatsoever. He wished only to feast until there was nothing left to feed upon. As Kreia put it, he is already dead. It is now just a matter of how many he kills and brings with him. We've definitely got to know what your thoughts are on this lore. Do you like Nihilus's backstory being explained in this way, or do you prefer it being a complete mystery? The way we see it here, things like this have two outcomes. Sometimes it's better to leave their origins obscure for the sake of the character's fear factor, or the second path, explaining the origins can give greater meaning to their motives, along with just how far they have fallen from where they have come. So now that you've heard our findings, which camp do you find yourself in? Let us know in the comments down below, and as always, thank you so much for watching the archives, and may the Force be with you.